Hello and welcome to your second lesson of our Waldorf Botany block. I am so glad that you are here today. Just to kind of recap your last lesson, um, at this point you should have your main lesson book title page finished. Um, and you should have had a chance to look at the syllabus. So if you haven't done that already, I encourage you to go ahead and do that. You will need your lesson book and pencils as you are working through your lesson today. So if you do not have those right now, then I encourage you to go get those. You will need to stop and start the lesson as we go through it. So because you'll want to copy things down, to copy notes, to copy pictures and things like that. So you will need to stop the lesson at a few points, and I will tell you where that is, but I want you to be aware of that. So with that in mind, if you are prepared, let's go ahead and let's begin our lesson. So we always start with an opening verse to kind of get our minds in the mindset of what we are going to be doing and focus our thoughts. So we will begin with that. It goes, tall as a tree I stand, for reach my roots in the earth, and warmth fills my heart with love. All right, so let's go ahead and let's begin. So this is our second lesson. We will have 12 lessons in this class, 2 each week for 6 weeks. So today we are going to talk a little bit about how we're going to think about plants. We're going to compare plants to the seasons and the life cycle of the plant. The other thing we're going to do today is that we are going to talk about the father of botany. His name is Theophrastus, and he is a really very interesting character. So today, when you are finished, you will have 5 pages in your lesson book. You will have your title page. You will have the introductory poem that we are going to read. You will have a quick verse about winter and summer, the life cycle of the plant. You will have the picture of the life cycle of the plant, and you will have a page for Theophrastus and what we're going to be talking about Theophrastus today. So just to kind of get you organized, when you are done today, you will have 5 pages, okay? But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about your assignments for this class. I want to give you kind of a big overview of what this class is going to be like. So you have these assignments that you see up here. You have 5 plant studies, okay? So what you will do for your plant studies is you will go out, preferably if it's something that grows near you, um, out in your yard or somewhere out in your community, and you will take your lesson book. So you want to do these in your lesson book, and you will draw your plant, and you will draw every detail that you could possibly see with this plant. Okay. Um, so sometimes, like I said, they call these botanical drawings. Um, these are, like I said, going in your lesson book. There are a few guidelines that I have listed in your syllabus. So you can use pencil, you can use colored pencil, um, you can use watercolor. I want you to pay close attention to all of the parts of the plant. That's why this is best if you can do this in person. If you don't have access to a garden, that is okay. You can print a picture online and of a live plant and work from that. But it's best if you can do this in person so that you can see a lot of the little details of the plant. You can even, sometimes what we'll do is we'll do a little uh, close up of a plant. We'll draw the whole plant, and maybe we'll in the corner we'll draw a close up of what the flower, the parts of the flower of that plant look like. All right. I encourage you to include the common name and the botanical name of the plant if you can find them. And what we will do for you to turn these in, I will post 5 individual classroom message threads. Okay, so I will post the first one today. So you will take a picture of your drawing and post that to our classroom message board for plant drawing 1. Okay. If you have any questions about that, let me know. So that is the first assignment. You will have 5 of those, about 1 a week. The second assignment that you will be doing in this class is that you will be doing readings from the book. So the book, Girls That Looked Under Rocks. And if you have not gotten that book yet, I encourage you to do that. Again, that information about that book is in the syllabus. So we have the first 4 stories in that back book is what we will be reading. So you will have a day when you should have read that. And then after that class, I will give you some questions. I want you to email those to me in a private message, okay? So you'll go through the private classroom message system. So you'll read the story, you'll watch the video, you'll take notes, you'll answer questions, and then you will send those to me in a private message, okay? Um, the other thing, so we have 2 other assignments. You have 1 hands-on project. So I want you to get your hands in the dirt or on plants or something like that. So you will have 1 hands-on project. I'm going to show you a list of some that you can choose from. All right. That is due in our last class. The next assignment is you have 1 plant profile report. All right. This is going to be similar to your plant study. All right, with a few differences. You are going to do the same thing. You are going to draw your plant drawing. Okay. You're going to write the common name and the botanical name. You are also going to add, so that's just like your regular plant study. The next thing that you are going to do is you are going to tell me what type of plant it is. So we will study different types of plants. We'll study lichens and mosses and conifers and cycads, all these different types of plants. Okay, so you're going to tell me the name of the plant, the botanical name. You're going to tell me the type of plant. Which one of those that we have studied is that plant? You know, is it a moss? Is it an algae? What is it? You are also going to tell me the parts of the plant. So in our next class, we'll talk about the parts of the plant. So I want you to see if you can identify the parts of the plant. And we'll talk about the different parts of different plants as well. So if you do a moss and it doesn't look like a flowering plant, you'll still know what the parts of that plant are when you're done. So identify the parts of the plant and then write a few sentences. I'd say 3 to 5 sentences about that plant, okay? Telling me what it's used for, maybe where it comes from. There's often some type of interesting history or folklore that is attached to our plants. Okay, so that's the other thing I want you to tell me. Okay, so those are your assignments. Please, if you ever have any questions about any of these assignments, how they work, what they're supposed to be, feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. So very quickly, I do want to go over our project choices, okay? So these are a list of choices that you can do for your hands-on project. The first one is spore prints. So when we talk about mushrooms, I'm going to explain to you how to do spore prints. You can plant a terrarium. You can create a scavenger hunt for your family to go on. So think about different plants that your family has to find, and then you all go out as a group, either in your backyard or you can go somewhere where you go hiking and do that. The next one is a root study. So what you do for your root study is you're going to grow a plant, only you're going to do it in a clear cup so that you can watch in that cup as the roots grow, okay? You can do flower pressing. You can do a mushroom walk, although for many people it's really hot and a lot of people aren't able to find mushrooms right now, but you could go do a mushroom walk, photograph what you see, and present that in the class, identify what those mushrooms are. You can do wax paper leaf preservation. So if you've ever gone and hunted leaves and pressed them between two pieces of wax paper with an iron, that's another thing you can do. There's also a way that you can do glycerin flower preservation. Okay, so you've got a lot of different choices there. If you have any questions about those, please let me know. So hopefully that kind of gives you a better idea of what your assignments are. Like I said, as always, if you have questions, please let me know. All right. The last thing before we jump into our lesson today. So you've made your title page and I gave you a few little instructions to do, but I want to give you some more guidelines about what your lesson book should look like, be like, what it should include. So number one, when you are writing in your lesson book, it should be neat and tidy. You might even want to practice your drawings before you put it in your lesson book. So your lesson book should have your best work, okay? Pages should have a border, your plant studies, your botanical drawings, the 5 botanical drawings. These are the only exception to this rule. I do not want you to put a border on those plant studies, okay, those 5 plant studies. The picture, I've given you an example here. This is an example that I've used in the main lesson book that I created as an example for my students. So you can use these. I coded them as to what parts of the class we'll be doing. So we do plant introductions. These are usually a little verse before we do a drawing of the parts of the plants. Okay, drawing of the parts of a mushroom or the drawing of the parts of moss, so on and so forth. Okay, so plant introductions are usually just a verse. Our plant drawings are the drawings that we do in our lesson that show the different parts of each individual type of plant. We do biographies. So today we're going to talk about Theophrastus. This is also for the stories in the book that we'll be doing. You could use those as well as a border. I also have definitions. We do a few definitions in this class. So that's the border I've used for those. Plant studies, like I said, we do not use a border for your 5 plant studies. Okay. Like I said, your best work goes in your lesson book. All right. So if you have to practice before you put it in, that's fine. To take your time, be neat, be tidy. When you are finished with this class, your main lesson book should be this beautiful example of all the hard work that you have done in this class. So take care to do your best work. Like I said, these borders are just a suggestion. Okay, so don't get caught up in this if this is not what you want to do. That is okay, but I encourage you to use a border on your pages, except for your plant studies. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies some things with your main lesson book. If you have any questions, by all means, let me know. And with that in mind, it is time to begin our lesson. All right, so on the page after your title page in your main lesson book, you are going to copy this verse. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to explain a little bit about what it means for what we will be studying in this class. So it says, the plant is a child of the earth and the sun. Just like some children are more like their fathers and other children are more like their mothers, some plants are more like the sun and others are more like the earth. Now, this is obviously not scientific, but this gives us a way to look at the plants that we will be talking about. So we may say the mushrooms are like the babies, and the mosses are like toddlers or some such thing. Okay, so this kind of gives us an idea as we move up the ladder in complexity as we talk about our plants. This gives us an idea of how they are, what we can think of them as. So for right now, what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video right here. I want you to write this down, copy this down. If you know cursive, this is an excellent time for you to practice your cursive. Write this down, give it a border. You can also add in somewhere maybe in that border in a free space that you have, add in something that you think of when you hear this this verse, okay? So go ahead and do that now, and then we will go on. Okay, so hopefully you've taken a minute and you have copied that first verse that gives you an idea of how we're going to be looking at things through this whole class. Hopefully you've had a chance to do that in your lesson book. So the next thing we want to talk about is the life cycle of the plant. Okay, so we have another verse to introduce that today. It says, in winter, the earth is awake, full of brightness in the form of seeds. In the summer, the earth lets all that brightness go out to this towards the sun. Right, so we'll talk a little bit more about this um, as we go along. But if you think about this, you think of in the wintertime, all those little seeds, they're all underground, and everything, all the activity, right, is going on underground. In the winter, the earth is awake. All the activity that's getting ready for spring um, is underground. It's going on underground. Um, but in the summer, everything sprouts up and it comes out of the ground. So in the summer, the earth lets all that brightness go out towards the sun. So in the winter, the earth is awake, but in the summer, right, everything goes out towards the sun. So this is an example that you can do. This is what I did in my lesson book example. I, of course, did my border. I also did a little picture there that kind of describes that. So if this is hard for you to read, I have this actually typed out on the next slide. So you can either pause here, copy this in your lesson book, or you can go to the next slide if it's easier for you to read. So I'm going to go to that next slide now. Pause here if you want to copy it from here, or go to the next slide if you're ready to do that. Okay. So this is that same verse, only it is typewritten out. So if you need to copy it here, go ahead and copy it from here. That is your choice. And when you are done, we'll look at that plant life cycle. Okay, so the next page. So far in your lesson book, you should have a title page. You should have that introductory verse um, about plants being similar to their mothers and their fathers and babies. You should have your verse about winter and summer. So the next thing, this is your fourth page that we talked about in your lesson book. This is the life cycle of the plant. And you can see that the life cycle of the plant is also similar to the seasons. And interestingly enough, all these things happen, right, at the season. So when we think of winter, we think of cold and we think of things being um, huddled in and underground. And that's how our seed is, right? Our seed is our little plant that is huddled um, into the ground and into its little casing, right? So in the spring, we start to get a little bit more active. Things around us start to get a little bit more active. Um, and the little seedlings start to sprout up, okay? Now, moving on into summer, that word is mature, M-A-T-U-R-E. We have a mature plant. It's not flowered yet, but the plant is mature and it's ready to flower. And this is summer. When we think of summer, we're kind of at our peak, right? Even in our own lives, we think of our peak as a summer, okay? Moving on, as the plant flowers towards the end of the summer, towards the end of fall, okay, or towards the beginning of fall, I guess, this plant will flower and move into its next cycle, okay? At the end of fall, we're right back at the beginning, moving into winter with our seed. So that flower starts to drop that seed and it begins all over again, okay? So take some time, write this down, draw this picture, and you can see I use the border on this like I showed you in the beginning. Again, you can use any border that you want. That's just what I chose to use, but this is a good example of that. So you're going to want to pause here, and when you're ready, we're going to go on and we're going to talk about Theophrastus. All right, so hopefully you've got your life cycle of the plant finished. So this is Theophrastus. He is called the father of botany. This man is amazing. Okay, so what you're going to do, you are going to take maybe a fourth of your page. Okay, you can kind of imagine your page in fourths. You're going to put that picture of Theophrastus up in the top left-hand corner. All right, so just like you're doing with your plant studies, look at all those little individual details. The interesting thing about this picture is this is the only image of Theophrastus that we have from his time period. The only one is this statue. So it's kind of interesting. So study those little details that are in that statue and draw those in that top quarter of your lesson book. Of course, put his name there, Theophrastus. He lived from 371 to 287 BC. Like I said, he was the father of botany. Everything that we know about the organization of plants, how they grow, what they're good for, things like that, came from Theophrastus' work. Okay, he was the first to use classification of the botanical world. Now we're going to talk about what's called the taxonomic system that we have nowadays, how we classify plants. It's very different than what Theophrastus did, but Theophrastus laid the groundwork for the classification system that we have today. Okay, it's different, but he laid the groundwork. He even developed his own vocabulary to talk about plants. So he knew so much that he was able to actually create his own words, his own vocabulary that he used to describe them. He realized the importance of climate and soil to plants. This was not something that people really thought about up until this point. But when he came along, he really started to study the plants. He had several of his own gardens that he used to study plants. But not only did he have his own gardens, what he would do, this is really interesting, is that he would hire Alexander the Great's soldiers to take samples and to make observations when they went to go conquer some far off land. They would study the plants while they were there, and then they would bring him back that information. So not only was he learning about the climate and the soil where he was also learning about the world around him with the help of other people. He also wrote several different volumes on all aspects of plants, everything, how they were used, how they grow, what they look like, what they're used for, what their plant parts were, everything, every different individual tiny little thing that you can think of about plants. Theophrastus wrote this, and there's two major bodies of work that he wrote about that consist of 8. One is 8 and one is like 9 books in the series. Some of those books are actually still available, but some of them are lost to time. We don't have them anymore. But some of them are actually still out there. So interesting. You can buy copies of them, obviously modern copies. But so take a minute. So Theophrastus is really, really, really interesting and really important. So this is a good place for us to start as we start to talk about all these different things: classification, plant parts, how things grow, what their functions are. And so take a minute, put Theophrastus in your lesson book. Pause the video and put him in your lesson book. When you are finished, we will wrap up our class for today. All right. So your assignments, you have 2 assignments coming up for next week. Number 1 is your plant study. That will be due before our next class. Okay, so I will post that to our classroom. I will make that that thread today so that you can post that before our next class. Um, your class after that, we will talk about the Maria Sibylla Merian story. So in class 4, okay. So you should have that read for class 4, and then we will go over the questions for that. So that concludes our lesson for today. I hope that you have enjoyed it. And we will go ahead, we always do a closing verse to kind of go our separate ways at the end of class. So we'll do our closing verse and we will be done for today. All right. Now that all my work has ended, what I've learned I'll put to rest, always knowing, always seeing that I have done my best. Wisdom and power and love will grow, and I will bless all people that I know. Thank you guys. I'll chat with you next week.